Why I Am Not Prime Minister, with a speech entitled Why I Am Not Prime Minister, Danny Callaghan.
Contest chairs, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. People often ask me, Danny, why are you not Prime Minister? And I always think, what a great question. So tonight, I want to answer it. Why am I, Danny Callaghan, not Prime Minister of this country? If I were Prime Minister, my 3 priorities would be to abolish marriage, to make some technical changes to intellectual property and planning laws, and to open the borders so that everyone could live where they wanted. And if that's not a vote-winning platform, I don't know what is. So there must be some other reason. And perhaps there is. When I was 13, and in my second year at high school, I didn't revise for my history test. The history teacher, Miss Watwood, who, incidentally, was a rotten cow, gave us a score broken down into categories, one of which was empathy. So, for example, if you did well on question 3 and question 8, you got a high score for empathy. I got a low score for empathy, just like I got a low score for everything else. A few weeks later, I had a meeting with my form teacher, Mr. Bolton, and he asked me, Danny, have you thought about what you'd like to do when you leave school? Yes, I said. I think I'd like to go into politics. Now, what I actually meant was I'd like to be Prime Minister, but I was waiting for him to say it. Oh, he says, I don't think that's a very good idea. In your history results, you got a low score for empathy. Don't you think that being a successful politician means really understanding what other people think and having empathy? I suppose so, I said. And that was the end of that conversation. But to be fair to the school, they didn't leave me entirely without career aspirations. A year later, my classmates and I were given a very long careers questionnaire to fill out. And it had questions about our strengths, our abilities, and our interests. A week later, the school's very new and rather expensive state-of-the-art 1980s computer methodically processed the results, and I was given the news that my ideal career was to be a bus timetable planner. Now, let me say, if you are a bus timetable planner, you are doing God's work. Really, I yield to no one in my respect for those heroes of the modern age who spend their lives planning timetables for buses. The only people more deserving of praise, in my opinion, are Toastmasters contest judges. Because they are all awesome. But you will understand that having had ambitions to be Prime Minister just a year earlier, to be told I should set my sights on being a bus timetable planner felt like a little bit of a come down. A few years later, I was at university, and one evening I had a conversation with my new friend, Piers Torday, who'd gone to Eton. And I asked him what it was like going to Eton. And he told me that from time to time they had visits from cabinet ministers, including Douglas Hurd, who'd been the Foreign Secretary and very nearly became Prime Minister. And so I asked him what Douglas Hurd said. And Douglas Hurd had given a speech to the whole school where he'd asked them if it wouldn't be too much trouble, and if they could spare the time, and only if they wanted to, of course, would they take the time to consider whether they wanted to go into politics? Because if they did, they would surely make a massive contribution and might even end up becoming Prime Minister. And of course, I reflected on the difference between the message I'd received and the message that Piers and his classmates had received. And fast forward 20 years, I am not Prime Minister. And a man who went to the same school as my friend Piers Torday is the Prime Minister. So is it case closed? Well, not so fast. It's true that if you look at things long term across populations with statistical correlations, that certain things in your past are likely to lead to more or less success in your future. And all of us, all of the time, need to be vigilant to make sure we don't hold others back or deny others opportunities because of our own prejudices. But really, there are enough examples out there of people who've overcome adversity and had success to give us confidence we can do the same. How about a boy whose father died as a baby and who was raised by his violent, alcoholic and abusive stepfather? Well, Bill Clinton became President of the United States. Or how about a boy growing up in grinding poverty? His father was unemployed for years, and then when he was 14, the boy caught typhoid. Well, Harold Wilson became Prime Minister of this country. Or how about Oprah Winfrey? Abused from the age of 9, ran away from home at 13, pregnant at 14, in trouble with the law, and she became the defining voice of her generation. My teacher's comment is not the reason I'm not Prime Minister. I know that because other people have overcome much, much worse. I don't go to political meetings. I don't campaign at election time. I've never stood for office. And those are my choices. So of course I'm not Prime Minister. But it's up to each of us to understand that our past doesn't have to define us. What matters is where we are now. What matters is where we are going. All of us face obstacles. All of us suffer adversity. All of us have challenges to overcome. But it's up to us, and it's up to you, whether you let those challenges defeat you or whether you let those challenges inspire you. It's up to you whether you let your past define you or whether you define your own future. And it's up to you, today and every day, to work out what you want and to go out there and get it. Madam Contest Chair.